Oh, goodness. This is my first ever video, and it's pretty weird. But hello, my name is Quinn from Fish Percolator, and I am a technical leadership consultant. And this is the first in hopefully what will become a series of videos about things that your tech teams might want to know. In this video, I want to talk to you about non-functional requirements, or NFRs, and why your product team might want to care about them. And I'm going to enlist the help of my fellow Kate Bush fans. Having your whole team thinking about NFRs early in the process might improve your estimates for delivery date and budget, and it will certainly result in a higher quality product. In this video, I'm going to break down what NFRs are, my top 10 NFRs, and then talk to you a little about what your team might do to introduce them into your team workflows. So, what even is an NFR? Do they have anything to do with these NFTs that crypto bros keep trying to scam me into buying? Why would I want my product to be non-functional anyway? Well, to explain this, we're going to need an example product. And I think that what the world needs right now is a social network and microblogging service specifically for Kate Bush fans. Let's call it Big Sky. Shout out to the 1.5 Kate Bush fans watching this who laughed out loud. I'll give you a moment to calm down. To explain non-functional requirements, we first need to explain functional requirements. Functional requirements are what your product does. You know, the reason that you're building the product in the first place. You might see functional requirements written in the form of user stories using what we call the Connextra format, like this. As a Kate Bush fan, I want to be able to post about my favourite songs where other Kate Bush fans exist, so that we can build community around the world's favourite musician. A user story contains 3 parts. These parts have different names depending on who you ask. But I like to call them a user, that's the person who is telling the story. A requirement, what is it that user actually needs or wants? And an outcome, that is, what will change meaningfully for that user as a consequence of this requirement being met. Now, you've probably seen user stories written from the perspective of the end user, the primary audience of your product. But there are many other people and systems that have stories to tell too. And they might also be functional requirements. For example, as a shareholder in this company, I need the product to generate more in sales than it costs to run so that I can get dividends on the company's profits. Now, that might be a bit cynical. You might want to reword it in terms of, for example, I want to be able to pay my team. But nevertheless, these are real, actual, functional requirements and the reason that your product exists. They're called functional requirements because they describe the intended behavior or functionality of the product. So, now we've established what functional requirements are. A non-functional requirement is a requirement for how you achieve the functional requirements, or a condition of success for those requirements that must be maintained. For example, someone wants to be able to post about their favourite Kate song, sure, but is Big Sky still a good product if they can only do this between 3 and 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday? Probably not. That's an example of an availability requirement, which is a type of NFR. This availability requirement could be written something like, as a Kate Bush fan, I want to be able to post content on this platform 24/7, because I worry that I will forget my amazing Kate-related content if I have to wait. You might have heard of some of the other NFR categories like Observability or Cybersecurity. Many of them have names that are long words ending with "itty", but also some of them don't, which irks me. Maybe we could come up with better names for them. NFRs are important because if they're not considered early, you may find that you cannot actually deliver the product you wanted at the quality you wanted because you haven't budgeted for the NFRs, either in time or in money. This is especially true in the era of vibe coding. If you ask an AI to help you design some tech, it's rarely going to consider any of the NFRs in its design, as it seeks only to fulfill your request, nothing more. Okay, here's a rundown of my top 10 NFR categories that you might want to consider when you're building an online tech product. Number 1, accessibility. Accessibility, often shortened to Ali, because it's such a long word that there are 11 letters between the A and the Y, is the ability for your tech to be accessed by the maximum amount of people. It covers access by disabled people, situationally impaired people, non-native English speakers, and more. So Big Sky's accessibility NFRs might include things like, as a blind or partially sighted Kate Bush fan, I want to be able to use all Big Sky's main features with a screen reader, so that I can be fully included in this community where I belong. Or, as a Kate Bush fan who cannot use a mouse, I want to be able to navigate Big Sky's user interface with a keyboard, so that I can still access all the features available to other users. Thankfully for this category of NFR, we don't have to write out all the requirements as user stories because we have WCAG, which stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. WCAG is a standard template set of NFRs that can apply to all web-based applications. No matter what people selling overlay tools will tell you, accessibility is not something that you can add to an application after you've built it. Your application has to be designed with accessibility in mind. The good news is, there is something of a cheat code to designing tech that is easier to make accessible, and that's called progressive enhancement. That's something that I don't have time for now, but it would make a good video or blog post in its own right. Okay, number 2, cybersecurity. If you're in a large organization, you've probably already got someone breathing down your neck about this one. But cybersecurity is a serious NFR for all web applications, even the smallest and most niche ones. The thing is, people aren't necessarily hacking you to get access to your data or your users' data. They may be intending to use your weak security as a way to get to your service provider, or, for example, to send more spam emails. Good security benefits everyone, not just you. You can write your cybersecurity user stories from the perspective of the attacker, if you like. So, for example, as someone who hates Kate Bush because I find her first 4 albums divisive, I want to gain access to Big Sky's servers so I can send loads of spam to its users and damage Kate's reputation. Well, no one wants that. Cybersecurity is tricky because, of course, you don't know what you don't know. No one designs their applications to be attacked. And that's why it's important to have people on your team familiar with it, specifically with the OWASP Top 10 security vulnerabilities. And also to occasionally get external penetration testers to actually attempt to hack your tech and report on how successful they were. So, for example, you could have this as a requirement. As the business owner, I need Big Sky to pass an external penetration test every 6 months so that I know our customers' data is safe from attackers. Okay, NFR number 3, information governance. Information governance, often shortened to InfoGov, is ensuring that you are protecting the data involved in your tech, both user data and, of course, your own proprietary data, and only revealing it to people who need it. Designing your application without considering InfoGov doesn't just mean you're failing to comply with the law, such as GDPR, we've all heard of that, but it also risks causing serious problems for your users or for your business. So here's some Big Sky NFRs around information governance. As a Kate Bush fan, I want to be able to post about my love of the song There Goes a Tenor, safe in the knowledge that non-fans will not find out, so that I can protect my reputation as someone who loves good music. And how about this? As the creator of Big Sky, I want to keep data about the number of users and how much they are paying a secret, so that I can maintain my competitive advantage against BeebNet and other musician-based social networks. Like most of the NFRs on this list, you can't add InfoGov as an afterthought. It has to be considered as part of the design of the application and constantly reviewed through a data protection or information governance policy. Even small-time technology carries great risks if personal data is leaked, so it's a good idea to take the time to consider carefully how much data you need and how you are going to protect it. Number 4, trust and safety. So those first 3, probably all things that you've heard of even if you haven't been prioritizing them. This one often gets sidelined when talking about protecting users, but for many applications it's actually really essential. Trust and safety is about making as sure as you can that interactions between users on your platform are safe and inclusive. For example, as someone posting about Kate Bush songs on Big Sky, I want to be able to report any messages that respond to my content in a creepy or sexual way and know that my reports are taken seriously, so that I can feel like a safe and welcomed member of the Kate community. Now, chances are your proof of concept, your first iteration, isn't going to contain any trust and safety features, and they may well be an afterthought, but they're still absolutely necessary for any app that contains users interacting with each other, and they can take a long time to build. Also important to consider under this category is how your application interacts with other people's trust and safety features. For example, if your application sends emails, your service provider may require you to properly handle people reporting your emails as abusive or spam in their email clients. NFR number 5, reliability and availability. So we mentioned availability in the intro, and here I'm going to lump it together with reliability, as these two NFR categories are very closely related. They refer to making sure that your application works reliably and is available when people want to use it. The NFR we mentioned earlier was this one. As a Kate Bush fan, I want to be able to post content on this platform 24/7 because I worry that I will forget my amazing Kate-related content if I have to wait. But reliability and availability NFRs are often worded from a business perspective. For example, using nines. The way nines work, 4 nines, for example, means 99.99% availability. That means a maximum downtime of 52 minutes per year. So we could write, as the business owner, I want the application to be available 99.99% of any given year to ensure we do not lose any users who might have paid for this service. Or we could say, as the business owner, I want to make it as easy as possible for users to report bugs so that we can prioritize fixing them and maximize the chance of users joining or continuing to use our paid services. Now, these NFRs might seem obvious from a business perspective, but it's surprising how often I don't see people planning for what's needed to make something available all the time. Like, reliability and availability are somehow too obvious to include in the list of requirements. But what happens if your site goes down on the weekend? Would you even know? Who would be bringing it back up? Okay, number 6, disaster recovery. What would you do if you lost all of your data in a fire at the data center? Restore it from backup? You have backups, right? Those of us who've been in the industry a long time all have a story to tell about the time that we entered an SQL delete statement without a where clause, or hit enter partway through an RM command and accidentally deleted huge swathes of users' valuable data. Yes, even me. And those of us who were lucky enough to work somewhere with the right guardrails were able to restore that data from a backup. So here's an NFR. As a creator of Kate Bush fan art, I want to know that my creations are safe when I post them to Big Sky, so that I can always find them online when I want to show my friends. And no, don't ask me for my Kate Bush fan art, although I can point you at some amazing art by other creators. Having a really well-designed backup strategy is key to any product that handles user data, or any kind of data. As well as considering what you are backing up and how often you are backing it up, you also need to consider where the copies are kept and, most crucially, how often you do a drill exercise to practice restoring the data. So many organizations back up in the kind of blind faith that the backup can be restored without ever actually checking that restoration from backups is possible. NFR number 7. Performance. People with fast internet connections and modern devices expect the products they're interacting with to be snappy. They don't often vocalize this need, but people get frustrated if they have to wait more than 0.3 to 0.5 seconds for something to load. They might even try reloading the page at that point, which causes even more traffic to your endpoints. So here's a performance NFR for Big Sky. As a fan browsing the Kate song feed, I want to always be able to see new content within 0.5 seconds of reloading the page, so that I can be sure that the site hasn't crashed when I'm desperate to find out what Kate songs my friends are listening to today. Performance is often overlooked during development because it isn't noticeable on fast development machines with small amounts of data and only one end user. But if you have NFRs for performance, you can retrospectively prioritize work to improve this when performance starts to drop below those tolerance levels. It's also important to consider this NFR when designing system architectures right at the beginning. If your product is going to have many concurrent users, have you considered how you can scale it horizontally? If it's going to have lots and lots of relational data stored, have you considered how you're going to be able to scale it vertically in the future? Number 8, documentation. Do you know how your application works? Do you understand the class structures, data models, and system architectures? Awesome! Now, what about when a new person joins the team tomorrow? You'll explain it to them. Cool. But what happens when you leave the company? What happens when you want to open your API to external developers? How are your support team going to know what the expected behavior is when a customer reports something unexpected? As a new engineer at Big Sky Inc., I want to be able to get started on designing new features without having to bother the senior engineers all the time, so that the senior engineers can be paid to do more valuable work. The answer to this, of course, is documentation. Documentation can feel like a massive burden and something that no one on the team wants to do, especially if it's been left too late in the process. But without documentation, you'll likely end up wasting huge amounts of valuable time and resources repeating yourselves or digging around for clues in the future, when a decision or a specification has been forgotten. There are a number of shortcuts that I like to take to make documentation easier, and I will explore them more on my blog or in a future video. Those shortcuts include behavior-driven development, or BDD, and architecture decision records, or ADRs, as well as the concept of a natural team librarian. If you want to hear more about these things, let me know and maybe I'll prioritize writing about them. Okay, we're into the last two now. NFR number 9, Observability. Observability is all about knowing how people are using your product and when things are going wrong. It's not really about spying on your users. Well, it can be, but it's more about ensuring you have all the information about things like crashes and performance issues from people who are actually using your product. Normally, observability requires you to integrate one or more observability tools into your backend, because the backend is where the logs are, and maybe your front end too, depending on the scenario. Sometimes the installation of these tools can be quite a small exercise, but it could also require deep integration if you want to collect more useful data or make it easier to search. So here's some example observability NFRs for Big Sky. As a support engineer for Big Sky, I want to know if reported customer bugs are one-off occurrences or something affecting multiple people, so that the business can make appropriate prioritization decisions about fixing them. And as an engineer working on a Big Sky bug report, I want to know the exact error message experienced by the user and any errors in the logs at the time, so that I can quickly reproduce this issue in my development environment. Okay, and NFR number 10, Maintainability. Now I've saved this one for last because, well, you're not going to like it. When you think of a product, you might imagine building it and then setting it loose on the world, only returning to fix bugs or add new features. But the reality is that the various components that your product is built out of, its dependencies, are constantly being updated upstream. If you don't devote energy and resources to keeping up to date with those changes, eventually your product will become very hard to maintain as you start getting incompatibilities between older and newer dependencies, or older dependencies fall out of support or even get turned off. I like to say that a product's development life is the same as its actual life. If you want to be able to maintain a product, you have to invest in its maintainability for the duration of its life. And this means having engineers assigned to it at all times, or at least at regular intervals, in order to ensure that it is kept up to date with all of its dependencies. You might write this requirement as something like, as the business owner, I want Big Sky to always upgrade dependencies within a year of their updates being released, so that I can ensure that it has a sustainable future and does not need to be rebuilt at great cost. And we've all worked somewhere where we've had to rebuild something at great cost. Okay, those are my top 10 NFR categories. Do you agree? There are loads of others. Which ones would be in your list? Now, I promised you some tips on what you might do to make NFRs part of your team workflow. Firstly, it's important that your team culture includes NFRs in the designs of new features and subsystems. The process of signing off a design shouldn't be complete until the NFRs have been considered. This is part of a wider culture of shifting left, which I'm planning to talk about more on my blog in the future. Secondly, it's absolutely critical to budget properly for NFRs. So often, budget planning considers the cost of developing a product as bigger than the cost of maintaining it. I think this is a false narrative because the development of a product has to continue throughout its life if you want to keep up the NFRs like cybersecurity and maintainability. I like to say that a product's development is complete when you turn it off forever. And these things are easier if you introduce a DevOps culture to your organization. And by DevOps, I mean that development and operations are managed by the same people, but also that product managers, delivery managers, business analysts, and so on take a deeper interest in the how of the product's operation as well as the what. One of the best things you can do with the DevOps culture in your organization is introduce organizational NFRs, also known as guardrails. These are NFRs that apply to your entire organization, and they're treated more like values rather than product-specific requirements. For example, you could say that your organization will always meet WCAG AA for accessibility, or that it will always have 4 nines of reliability. If you're a large enough operation, then having dedicated site reliability engineers, or SREs, in your organization will help to ensure that the right questions are being asked and the organization is held to the appropriate standards. But maybe don't hire these until you're at least part-way towards a DevOps culture, or the SREs that join your team will feel powerless to effect the change that they want to see. And finally, please continue to be skeptical about AI and vibe coding. AI is a bit like an engineer fresh out of a boot camp. It will gladly assemble you something that does exactly what you ask, at least exactly what you ask in a single use case, but the one that you're going to use to verify it. But NFRs require a level of comprehension that is not possible for a large language model type AI because of the maths behind how they work. I hope in this short time, I've helped you understand broadly what NFRs are, and why any product that wants to be successful will want to consider them. And maybe, just maybe, why replacing your engineers with AIs that never think about this stuff is a bad idea. Okay. I made it to the end of my first video. Thank you to Kate Bush for being so incidentally important to my example. Kate, I love your music and please don't sue me. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love for you to like this post, subscribe to this channel, although it might be a while before my next actual video content. And let me know what you think. Is this kind of long-form video content better for you than a written blog post? Would you watch more of these videos? But more than this, please subscribe to my email newsletter. The link is below, to get more of this sort of content in your email inboxes every month. Every person who subscribes helps me and my business out. Thanks so much for watching, and let me know what you thought of this in the comments. I'll see you next time, whenever that might be. Bye! An outcome is what will change meaningfully. An outcome is... Okay, let's try that again. Many of them have long names that are long... Information governance, or infogov, is... Nope. Okay, NFR...